Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last session of Developer Week 2022. As I mentioned before, we have saved the best sessions for the last. Before I introduce our speaker, I just wanted to inform you that all the recordings of Developer Week would be available in our YouTube channel on Monday onwards. I think most of the videos are already available, but the complete set will be available on Monday. You would get an email with all the details. The next talk is about employing CF APIs to tackle security exploits. I'm very excited about this talk because Mike Brunt is going to show how to use CF API Manager for the same. Mike has been a well sought out speaker at all of our conferences. He has used almost all versions of CF. He moved on from just creating great CF apps to, you know, make all the apps run faster. And what better place? I think he was with the founders of CF, right, Mike? Uh, Mike, over to you.
And Mike, you'll just need to enable your microphone and camera here in this room as well.
Do what you're saying now. That's better.
There we go. We can hear you.
Okay. Can you see me yet?
Not yet. No, if you want to click the camera button at the top.
Okay. Yeah, I should be all right in a minute. Hopefully. Aye. I think. Aye. Okay. You see me okay?
No, I don't think you've clicked the camera button just yet.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
All right.
You look fantastic.
2 clicks. All right. So I'm guessing I'm live now. Is that right?
You are live and ready to go. Just click on
Yes,
that
you
button
are,
whenever
Mike.
you're ready.
Okay. Great. So where are we? So sorry, I missed your last bit there. Do I need to click on something else?
Yeah, Mike, sorry. If you could click on the screen button, that will start your screen share here.
Okay. Aye, okay. How's that?
And just continue to say
desktop,
just like before.
Okay. All right.
We're seeing PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There we are.
You're good to go, Mike.
All right. Okay, so I just wanted to start by I want to start by saying thank you very much to everybody that's come along, and I'm always more than honoured to be asked by Adobe to speak about ColdFusion and what it's done to my life. I actually one of the first blog posts I did as CF Whisperer years ago. I can't remember the year. Anyway, I did this fairly long blog piece about how ColdFusion had changed my life, and I don't exaggerate when I say that. So again, thanks to everybody for coming along here. So talking about my life and history, I want to go through this slide a little bit. As Kishore mentioned, I absolutely was the first really widely usable version of ColdFusion was 1.54, which is where I started. At that time, those who were around at the same time will remember it was DBML, not CFML or CFM. But there's a few bits of history attached to it, if I may sort of share them, because I think they're very relevant to the intro that we just saw. ColdFusion absolutely, at the time that it came out, was completely revolutionary. And in my opinion, it's continued to be so in so many ways ever since. It was, so just to illustrate that, if I may, I'll give a little history. At the time that I encountered ColdFusion, I was messing around with web development as a hobby. My job at that time was nothing to do with technology, and I remember I'd been approached by Cummins Diesel, a US engine manufacturer, because that's the world I was in, and they'd shared with me in a bar, interestingly enough, about a problem they had, which is with excess parts stock distribution, which they've been trying to figure out how to deal with that, and had used things like in those days fax machines and computerized fax machines, but it really wasn't working for them. And I was in a bar in England, in northern England, which is where I was born, with this person from Cummins, and we're talking over a beer, and he said, I wish we could find something that would help us to share our excess stock somehow, that's better, much better than what we have. And we got talking, and I said, I assume it's in some sort of database or other. And he said, yeah, we keep it in a database and create these fax listings of it that we send out. And I said, okay. So that sort of lit because I was dabbling around with code, that sort of lit a fire in me. So I started trying to figure out how could we help Cummins Diesel, which is a fairly big company, get their excess parts stock so that they could distribute the lists. That was the nub of it. And I because of me dabbling around with code, I came across bulletin boards. I'm sure many of you who were around at that time remember CompuServe and America AOL, or America Online as it was called. So I went to a couple of bulletin board conferences in Colorado. I was visiting here for some reason. This is while I'm still living in England. And anyway, I think it was called One BBS Con in maybe, it wasn't Fort Collins, it was Colorado Springs, that's where it was. And, again, I'm looking at what was available in the bulletin board world in a bar again one night. And there's these people talking about that. This is probably 1992, 93, I'm guessing, talking about this thing called the World Wide Web. And I'm sitting wherever I was. Anyway, when they started saying what it could do, I have a background in networking, computer networking. So it sounded to me like anybody could allow the contents of their computer to be shared with anybody else who could get to the computer using this thing called the web. I had no idea how the deep technology of it worked, but I thought that sounds pretty bloody amazing. So I started looking around for web server software, and all that was available at the time was. I hope you don't mind me doing this history, but I think it really speaks to what the intro video, like I say. So basically, I'm looking around for a web server that I could afford, and at that time it was Unix, and I couldn't even think about it. But then this fire was letting me about the web, and I kept looking, and I had I'd got a Windows NT 3.51, I think it was, if my memory serves me right. And sure enough, at one of the BBS conferences, I find there's like a sideshow going on where they're selling things, and there's O'Reilly, the book people. They had a web server, or it was called O'Reilly website, and I could afford it, which was like, oh, this is open up my world type thing, and So anyway, I got the copy of O'Reilly website. That was the first commercial web server for Windows, and installed it and bundled in this inside it. This is what's the word I'm looking for? Not synergy, because that's the wrong word. Synchronicity, that's not either. Anyway, I'll think of the word. But anyway, bundled inside with O'Reilly website was ColdFusion. And first of all, the name sort of really struck me, and I thought, oh, that's a cool name, So anyway, cut a long story short, because I could go on a long time about this, and I'm not going to. But the point is, that is what opened my world. I was able to take the problem that Cummins had using, and I'm going to swear now, and I'll apologise, a version of Microsoft Access, which for what it was and what it is has been a pretty neat product. And I actually got a copy of the data from Cummins after, I had database experience as well. Got it into Microsoft Access and got it through ColdFusion, viewable through a web interface. And there we are. I mean, that at that time was completely, revolutionary, basically. So that's how I got into ColdFusion. I was a business person needing with a friend who had a problem. We became the Cummins Diesel bloke, and I became friends. lo and behold, not long after that, I get Caterpillar reaching out to me. And I'll leave the story at that point because there's more to it. But that's just imagine that for a minute, just to emphasize the incredible, game-changing place of ColdFusion. I mean, here we are, and I'm dealing with Caterpillar and Cummins. I will finish that quickly by saying the first commercial website I developed was for the Queen Mary in Long Beach, and that was ColdFusion, and that was ColdFusion 1.54 and DBML, and that was their first website too. So that being said, let's move forward. I thought that bit of history might be of interest, because revolutionary ColdFusion is and was and is. So in 1999, myself and about 30 other people got recruited by Alaire, who were the company that created ColdFusion, to join a consultancy team. That was divided into two main arms, I suppose, or anyway, there was a J-Run team and an Alaire Spectra team. The J-Run thing is a story in its own right too. I mean, that was what brought ColdFusion to run on Java. We couldn't understand at the time why they bought this company called Life Software, but that's the reason was they wanted to port ColdFusion to Java, which in my mind was a great move, but it was pretty confusing at the beginning. And I mentioned a couple of names here. Sean Caulfield, after Macromedia acquired Alaire, Sean Caulfield really pulled everybody out of the fire by taking ColdFusion MX6, which was the first Java version of ColdFusion, and making it work, because it was as ColdFusion 6.1. Yeah, Sean Caulfield, I have a lot of respect for that.
Mike, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure we're seeing the LibreOffice authoring side of things. I think you may have gone into slideshow mode, but you're not sharing the slideshow mode monitor. You're sharing your authoring tool. So we're still seeing the first slide. Is that right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Right.
That I thought it might not be.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. And I apologize for everybody going on thinking you were seeing what I was seeing.
No problem. They're great stories.
So let me see what I can do here. All I can do is stop sharing, which I will. Now I'm still locked into this. Okay, so no, that's gone on to the next screen. So hang on a minute. Okay, so now I'm looking at the the LibreOffice.
Yeah, you'll need to click screen again back in Connect just to share your screen, and maybe select the different screen if you've got two monitors.
Okay, let's have a look here. So that's great. So entire screen's grayed out. I can't select that. Let me try this again. So what I'm going to try now is share window. So let me see if you see anything different. I'm going to go into slide mode now. Does that look any different?
No, we're still seeing the LibreOffice authoring mode. But that works if you want to make that as big as you can. I think everybody's seeing that.
Okay.
So we can see your slides. Just be aware that we're looking over at your other monitor.
Okay. Let me. All right. So has that moved on?
Yeah, we're on the milestone slide right now, slide 2.
Yeah, so it looks like it's obliterated the title. So anyway, let me come back in at that, and apologies to everybody for glitches on my end. Maybe it's a LibreOffice thing, but the content's still there. It's just not going to look as nice. So anyway, let me go back to what I was saying. So in 1999, I was recruited as a consultant. There were two teams. I'm just repeating this a little bit here: a J-Run team and a Spectra team. I was on the Spectra team, and for those who remember Spectra, it was basically a custom tag-based CMS, content management system, which actually got really well taken up at the time, largely by healthcare clients. But the issue was it was very difficult to install. It was difficult to administer. because of it was based on LDAP and advanced security. So there was a lot of need for consultants, and at that time it was on site. So during one of the meetings, actually for the release of Spectra, the next version, we were in Alaire's headquarters at Newton, and we get this this sort of message that we were about to be, we being Alaire, acquired by or merged with a company whose name began with M. You know, that's how it was. That's how it was said to us. And of course, we all thought that it was Microsoft. I'm just going to get a little water, but I think I can still keep talking. So anyway, here we are sitting around, you know, all trying to figure out what was going on, and eventually it was revealed to us that the company that we were merging with, or were acquiring us, is Macromedia. That started sort of a new. I mean, from being a dedicated server-side entity, which is obviously what ColdFusion is and was, largely speaking, we got rolled into a company that was really a tooling company in many ways, Macromedia. I think the best thing that came out of that whole time was the melding of ColdFusion with Flash, and I still see remnants around and about of that nowadays. So anyway, let me move on a little bit. So Macromedia basically laid us all off eventually. Decided they didn't need a consulting team. Ernst & Young reached out to me one day and said, there's no more ColdFusion consulting team. So I went with another bloke called Patrick Quinn, and we formed a company called WebApper, which still exists, purely to be able to handle the Ernst & Young business. There were legal reasons for that. So let's keep going. It's just taking longer than I thought, but you know, all these memories keep coming back to me. So in 2015, another pivotal thing happened to me. I first of all read the Ethereum white paper, and it opened my eyes to what Bitcoin was built on, which is what we now know as blockchain. And the Ethereum thing, I thought, if people can write applications on a blockchain, which weren't able to with Bitcoin, that's going to open up all sorts of doors. So I started digging into blockchain technologies more at that point. I just want to make a slight departure here, and this is really to offer something which is sort of slightly related to technology, but not directly. So, as we all know, there's been terrible fires and so on going on in Europe, heat wave. We've got the similar thing here in the south and the southwest of the United States, and it's pretty well accepted now that the weather's changing. You know, what the reasons are controversial, I know, but the point is the weather's changing. The patterns that we've relied on are not there anymore. I just want to make an offer. If anybody, this is a front cover of an amazing book called Permaculture: A Designer's Manual. I'm very heavily involved in permaculture, and if I can be of help to anybody out there to learn more about permaculture and what it means, and what it can do for us as the weather keeps changing, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm not going to go on about it a lot because that's not what today's about. But please feel free, as I say, to reach out to me if you want to know more about permaculture, how it can help, and you know, how it'll help us deal with what's happening. So let me move on. These are the Web3 or blockchain projects I'm currently involved in. There's Hyperledger is a business version of blockchain technology. Basically, it's lots of different things that got rolled into the Hyperledger project. It's open source. All the different parts of it are downloadable. So if anybody wants to try around with blockchain projects, the big difference between Hyperledger and most of the other blockchain projects is that Hyperledger is permissioned. Typically in their projects, you have to be asked in, whereas you can join Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many of the other permissionless blockchains. Pi is a project that's the top right, out of Stanford University, that I'm more of a user than anything else. Freos bottom left is a project out of New Zealand, which is concentrated on non-hierarchical business structures, also known as DAOs, or I'll remember what the term stands for in a minute. And then Earth Dollar bottom right, which is turning regeneration into a reward system rather than what we're dealing with now, which is depleting Earth's resources and being paid for it. So that's the blockchain projects I'm on. They're all different technologies. Now I want to get at last, I'm sure everybody else is saying at last, APIs. Yeah. So this is an article, or from an article that I read, that I'm linking to in these slides, which I think will be available eventually. So if you see that top line there, this is a large multinational company that did you could say an audit on the APIs that they were either using or had created for use in the business. And they found that this is in April 2022, they got over 15,000 APIs in use, which they weren't really aware of. And that was, as I stated here, 201% up year on year. So largely because of the uptake of blockchain and Web3, which is really running apace. I'm sure many of you have run into it in different places. The use of an API is really ballooning, and I don't see that changing for one particular reason, which I don't think I mentioned. And that is, and I realized this at the beginning when I first got deeply into blockchain, most of the data that's needed in business transactions, excuse me, is legacy data. So it's in legacy databases, data stores. So the purpose of an API is to allow, there's lots of purposes, but particularly in the blockchain world, which is where the exponential growth is going, the purpose of an API is to allow different systems to communicate and exchange data. So I will deviate a little bit, but it's completely irrelevant. So in my work with Alaire and, with the work we were doing there, a lot of it involved load testing. We were using a tool called Segway Silk Performer, which, was a very expensive load testing tool. Nowadays, just as a little recommendation, I use JMeter, which is a Java-based open source tool, incredibly powerful, very well supported. So if anybody's interested in load testing, that's a tool I can recommend. That's JMeter. But let me go back to why I mentioned load testing. So when the way that JMeter works on a lot of these tools, you browse a website through a proxy, and what happens is everything that gets passed back and forth gets recorded. So at the end of the session, maybe a typical log in, browse around, log out, whatever it is, session, you've got a script because everything you've done has been recorded. Now, in the early days, that was fine. That was enough, But as the years passed, I started to see more and more dependencies being coded into web applications, outside dependencies. And there's an old saying, which is another aside, it's the lowest common denominator. So just as a tip, if you or your clients are relying on outside resources, APIs, of course, will be one. Really pay attention to the performance, because if something's coded badly at the other end, then it's going to affect overall performance. So that's more of a general recommendation relating to APIs and any outside dependencies. But let me go back to the example I was giving about the load tests recorded, the scripts ready. What I started to see is all these outside calls coming in the script. Sorry, I'm talking myself hoarse here. So basically, what I had to do, and I still have to do to this day, I have to take out a lot of these these call outs to things like Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc. Because if I'm running a load test and I've got 100,000 users hitting one of those interfaces, I can really easily bring people into bring one of my clients into a DDoS attack, scenario. But the point I'm making, and this is the important point, there's a lot of interdependencies going on now in the web. I'm probably not telling any of you anything you don't know, but it's important to pay attention to for various reasons. One of which is what we're here to talk about today, which is APIs. And as I say, I'm going to repeat this: API use will increase, no doubt about it. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry, I'm not able to show you the slideshow itself. This is just a filler slide. We're all under threat of one kind or another in the technology world at all times. I mean, a classic example of that and its effects was the fuel pipeline on the east coast of the USA, which had it was a ransomware attack which had fairly dire consequences almost immediately, and it illustrated another thing, which is our just-in-time systems, whatever they may be, food, etc. Anyway, let me get back to so this is what sorry, this is probably hard to see, but we will look hopefully at a proper I have API Manager running locally, so we should be able to look at it, but that's what it looks like after you've logged in. All right, so and there's several slides in this slide deck which are pretty text intense, and I apologize for that. But there's a reason. It's because I want these slides to be useful after the event, not just during this this presentation. So a lot of these exploits are very similar to what happens in the web world generally, which is sort of good news, because I'm sure a lot of people have already got things in place to deal with these things. Mitigation, I think, is the word I wanted to use. So a lot of that is already people are already familiar with it. And I should state at this point in time, I am not a security expert. I never have been. I never will be. But I do, in my day-to-day work, I'm obviously in assisting clients, always, keeping security in mind. So this slide, as I say, shows some of the exploits that go on against APIs, and a lot of some of these, and I'll touch on them hopefully when I get to through an API Manager, are certainly usable for API Manager or in API Manager. So let's keep going. So what do we do? What can we do to mitigate these mounting security challenges? And they're mounting because, two reasons really. One is there's more hackers of a black hat type, and the second reason is, as I said already, the amount of API use in technology, in the technology world we're in, is increasing, and I don't see that decreasing anytime soon. I will make one for the geeks amongst us, something that's really well worth looking at, which is a completely different technology stack. It is something called the Internet Computer from the Dfinity Foundation. I won't go on long about that here, but it's a very different way of dealing with. In actual fact, they're trying to reconstruct the internet or provide something that's got internet-like capabilities, which is architected in a different manner. So that's the Dfinity Foundation and the Internet Computer. So that's something that's worthy of looking into. This next slide is very text heavy. Again, I'll repeat myself, and you probably can't see it as well as you could if it was in a slideshow. These are what can be done to mitigate. What I showed on the previous slide is what the attacks can be comprised of. This is a slide that shows how to mitigate what's coming at us. And I will say one thing here, that the top two items are incredibly important. And again, these slides are meant to be used after the event also. So the top one, and I would advise this for yourselves or for your clients, depending on where you work and how you work. Inventory, I'll read it because it may not be very easy to read for you. Inventory all existing API endpoints. This should be a first step in determining what the attack surface could be. This audit should show the actual requirement of each API endpoint and any vulnerabilities shown in the previous slide, in the table above, as it said, but it's actually a slide before. So the point here is, this is really important, because what tends to happen with APIs is they tend to sort of ingratiate isn't the right word, but they tend to creep into application development without being seen as anything other than just another part of the application. But they're not. The security weaknesses, or they can be. So one thing I would advise everybody to do, either on their own behalf or on behalf of clients, is inventory all the existing API endpoints in applications. And that means API endpoints from where you're getting data, and API endpoints from where you're sharing data. You need to know exactly what's going on. Repeating myself several times there. The next point, which is build API security for new applications and features at the planning stage. I'll read this in case it's too small to read. As with the applications themselves, any security concerns should be in the very early planning stages of any new apps or features using API endpoints. Actually, I'll get a bit more general there. Certainly, it's important. In other words, if you're going to use APIs, look at the security aspects of them, in the design process. I'll go into another aspect there, which is something I've said at other presentations I've given. If you're in at the beginning of a new application design and development, make the assumption from the beginning that it's going to be big, that you're going to need a lot of resources. It doesn't cost anything to do that of any note, because you're not using those resources yet. But plan as if you're going to have to use those resources. And I'll give you an exact example of that was actually at the time, I think, one of the largest ColdFusion applications. Toys R Us might have been the biggest. But anyway, I'm talking about MySpace. And I got involved helping MySpace, not officially through Macromedia or Alaire, but just through a friend. They came out to Los Angeles, and that's where I was living at the time. But what had happened to them, they paid little or no attention to the fact that MySpace might get big. And it became the 5th largest application on the internet, I think, at one time. But because they hadn't planned, for any sort of long-term growth of any note, they got caught, and they had all sorts of performance issues. And of course, the rest is history. It's interesting to note that MySpace were acquired by News Corporation, which I'm sure a lot of you know. And had they not have been, they probably would have disappeared, because they just weren't in a position to cope with the traffic. So that's another important point I would like to make, not only for our APIs, but just generally for applications. Make sure that you consider how popular something might become in the planning stages. So another little slide here. This is one from my last presentation. ColdFusion has a big place in blockchain and Web3 applications development. It's something that I think could be more explicitly, said, you know, because we tend to be seen, as we all know, we totally unfairly we're dealing with because we've been around so long. And I say we because I feel like I've always, you know, certainly my technology career, ColdFusion has been number one center in my life, like I said earlier in my presentation. So, you know, then I'm going to show the next slide a bit of a schematic of a blockchain application that I was sort of involved in from the point of view of the planning stage. Let me get to that. So this is a schematic. I did show it at my last presentation because it's still very relevant, of a supply chain application using blockchain as a core component. The advantage of blockchain technology in supply chain systems is that it's very easy to record the progress of something through a supply chain using blockchain, you know, so that we know where something is at any point in time. And my heavens, haven't there been some, you know, apart from the weather situation that we're dealing with, we're also dealing one way or another with supply chain issues, you know, and I'll touch on that. I mean, my way of dealing with that in my own life is to simplify my life. I don't know whether you can see where I am, but I'm in a tiny home, which is sort of the old part of the permaculture part of my life. But you know, supply chain problems are impacting us. It's not so bad when the impact is on, you know, in things like, you know, something that, you know, a new computer or, you know, something of that nature. But when the impact is from a food supply situation, that's serious stuff, and that's happening in different places. You know, just quick reference again to permaculture. I'm growing a lot of my own food. Again, I'll repeat my offer. If any of you need any help in that, by all means, reach out. And there's a couple of people in our world who are already doing that in one way or another. Charlie Earhart's one, and Jim Lether, another, who, you know, and there are others I'm sure that I don't know about. But certainly it's a movement, you know. So let's continue. So, and I think I'm almost at the point where I can, if it works, I can take a look at this. Now the issue is I don't know whether you're going to be able to see it. So if you don't see, well, let me bring it up. If you don't see the login to the API Manager, can you let me know? Is anybody out there? This is the login to the API Manager. So I'm going to continue assuming that you can see it. And if you can't, I apologize. Hopefully the recording will pick that up after the event.
We can see it, Mike. Yeah, it's a little small. It's a little small. The writing is a little bit small, but that's okay. I think people have seen it.
All right, I'll try and talk through things then. And thanks for letting me know on that. Okay, so here we go. I did, in the slides, by the way, I did share a link. It's just as a comment point, and for Adobe, it's sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find the download for API Manager. I did include it in the slides, so if anybody wants to download it, you know, they can. So this is what you see when you log in to API Manager. There's, you know, this will vary depending on what everybody else, how everybody else uses it. I've just gone with the defaults, basically, because I don't know any better yet. It's learning for me. I mean, I've been looking at API Manager one way or another since it came out in 2016 with the ColdFusion 2016 Enterprise. But I do intend to bring it more into my work. And this is fairly new for me because it's only in this last probably 12 months or so that I've realized how important and how vulnerable APIs are, you know, in this mushrooming world of, sorry about that notification there, in this mushrooming world of, you know, of Web3 and so on. So anyway, this is going back to what I was saying. This is what you see when you log in the first place. which is your general configuration. I'm still learning. And what I was going to say is what my plan is. Hopefully, I'm going to talk to some at Adobe. What I'd like to do is bring this more into my work in the Web3 world. But by having something I can sort of experiment with, and I know that this is this is a trial version. You probably can't see it because it's too small, but I've got 28 days left. But anyway, I'd like to really bring API Manager more into me work, and that's my plan. So let's have a look here. This is a really important part that I'm gonna show now, which is security. So if we look here, there's lots of settings here that, and I touch on these actually in the slides to a greater or lesser extent. One of the ways to ensure that APIs, this is to ensure that APIs are more secure is to set limits or thresholds. So that for instance, let's look at one in the middle, which you may not be able to read, and it says Mike's invalid login attempts before lockout.
Hey, Mike, sorry to interrupt. I think actually people are still seeing your slides. So if you currently have API Manager live in a screen, we are not able to see that at the moment.
So let's have a look. So let me stop sharing and try again then.
Sure thing.
Yeah, apologies for this. I don't know what's going on.
No worries. Yeah, Connect can sometimes share the things that you don't want shared. It's all good.
Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm trying to find where I need to go back to here I'm thinking. Okay, so let's have a look. Screen.
And I'll let you know what I see once it loads up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Now that's interesting because it's not allowing me to. There's a little thing at the bottom that's blacked out.
Yeah, it looks like you don't. It's not giving. Are you on a Mac?
No, I'm on a Windows 11.
Oh, interesting. No, it should be showing. Yeah, we're seeing a black screen, so it's not liking whatever's on the screen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, just so you know what I'm seeing. So I have three choices. One is entire screen. This is sharing.
Yeah.
The other is window. So entire screen. When I select that, okay, let's try this. Let's see if this is any better.
There we go. There it is.
Yeah.
Now we are seeing your browser with API Manager Administrator. All right. Sorry.
No. Thank you for letting me know, because obviously I'm, as we say in England, rabbiting on, and people aren't seeing what I'm talking about.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll just go back quick here because when we log in, that's basically what we see. To API Manager, and as I said at the time, these are I just accepted the defaults. So let's go on a little bit because this was the part that I was. So this is the part that's important that I was talking about that you couldn't see. And so this is security configuration screen. Here we've got some of the on one of my slides, the most textual one, that's got loads of text on it. There's various recommendations of things to do to secure APIs, and a lot of those involve setting things like thresholds and watching suspicious activity. As I mentioned earlier, I've still got lots to learn in using API Manager, and I'll repeat myself. I want to try and find a way somehow to start using it in some of the work that I'm doing. One of the clients I'm helping is trying to incorporate. Just an example, is trying to incorporate USDC, which is a stable coin, into their projects. The interesting thing about USDC, which is the second biggest stable coin, cryptocurrency construct. Jeremy Allaire is the CEO of the company that runs that or offers that, which is called Circle. That's the name of the company. So it's funny how life comes around sometimes. So I've got a client who's trying to incorporate USDC into their operations. So it would be interesting to use API Manager to connect to circle somehow and their APIs, because it would be like Back to the Future, wouldn't it? Anyway, the point here is the I don't know how big what you're seeing is, but about halfway down the middle screen there is an example. It says max invalid login attempts before lockout. So that's you can set that. That's an example of a threshold that you might set to say, hang on a minute, that this person's tried to, or this thing has tried to log in 6 times. We're going to block that. We're going to lock it. And there's other things here like account lockout duration, or auth settings in here. I think the thing about the API Manager, it's a bit like ColdFusion was in its early days. In many ways, it's like a Swiss Army knife, isn't it, of how to deal with APIs, basically. The interesting thing, by the way, just as a conversation point, is API Manager is written pretty much entirely in Java. And that, you see, and I'll say something here, because I think that might have its advantages in some ways, because I could see ColdFusion API Manager as a different product altogether, offered to all companies, basically, whether they're running ColdFusion or not. And I don't say that in any way to demean ColdFusion. As I've said many times, it's been my life, basically, or changed my life. But if we could maybe get ColdFusion API Manager into organizations that don't currently use ColdFusion, that might be a good way to bring people to the realization that as to what ColdFusion really is. That's my thought. So who knows? So anyway, the point I'm making here is security configuration is an area where we can set thresholds and look for things that may be suspicious. Change other settings. I'm still learning this. I've got to, like I said, I've got to say, I really want to pull it into the work that I'm doing. Let's go a few here. Here we can add users. There's a friend of mine and I who worked together for years, who are working together on these internal testing type projects for API Manager at the moment. So this is where we can add users. So again, I've played around a little bit adding organizations here. So Permaledger is actually a project that it's one of my own projects, which revolves around the technology side of permaculture, things like tracking growings, and I have a very large seed bank with hundreds of thousands of seeds in it, which I've collected over years. So I'm using, my idea, I haven't done it yet, is to use, there's an API capability within Permaledger. So I haven't done anything with it yet, but that's me aim as time goes by. Let's go into this. So this is another aspect of setting limits and thresholds. Because one of the aspects, apart from trying to log in multiple times and failing, because it's a brute force attack, some other aspects is rate limits. So unfortunately, the nefarious actors got in and started doing things, but we can then via ColdFusion API Manager we can apply limits, limits, thresholds. Anything that's suspicious can be controlled within API Manager. And this I see is very powerful. Again, it's an indication of the fact that somebody's trying to do something that they shouldn't. So that's under the SLA section of API Manager. What I'm going to do, incidentally, is to do to record my own screen share to share around and about once I've had more time to to play around with play around sounds bad, to look at API Manager more closely. It has a clustering aspect to it. I haven't done anything with that yet. Funny enough, I was very deeply involved in clustering with, another quick bit of history. In the early days of ColdFusion, they acquired a company in Nashua, New Hampshire. I can't remember the name of the company, but anyway, they brought out this. This is pre-Java days. They brought out this wonderful construct called ClusterCats. If any of you can remember it, that was probably the best software clustering mechanism I ever came across. And unfortunately, I think it might have been when ColdFusion went to Java. It might have been when Macromedia took over. Eventually, that went away, but that was a pretty wonderful product. So this one here, CF Discovery Server. This is a way for API Manager to find ColdFusion, or to not to find, but to it's called Discovery, but to add, so you can add your ColdFusion servers into API Manager to be managed by ColdFusion servers to be managed by API Manager. And I realize there's there's obviously aspects of managing APIs already in ColdFusion itself. But this is a way of adding existing ColdFusion servers. So we're getting a little bit towards the end of things here. This is setting up a mail server. I haven't done that yet. Oh yeah, this is important. So I'm a fanatic, I suppose you could say, about logs, because in my world, in my life, in the work that I've done, in the troubleshooting and the capacity planning and so on, logs has really been the main tool I've had. And I say that with this as an amplification. When I was with CFusion, with WebApper, sorry, let me get that right way around. When I was with WebApper, we launched a product called CFusion, which was a monitoring tool, basically based on it was a Java listener tool, which adapted to ColdFusion and did pretty well with it. Some of you out there may be still using it. You may still come across it. Fusion Reactor and their team actually launched about the same time, and they came up with another wonderful tool, Fusion Reactor, the tool Integral they're called. I think David Tattersall had been one of the speakers in this week. Anyway, I'm going to say this, setting those aside, even to this day, if I have a client that's got a problem, whatever the problem may be, one of the first things I do is look at the logs. And I've got to say this, outside of any other product or anything I've ever come across in this world of mine, nobody yet has done a better job of logging than Alaire, Macromedia, and Adobe have done with ColdFusion. I will make one recommendation of an incredibly powerful logging. This is ColdFusion logging setting, which is not on by default. It's called metrics logging. I've done a few articles on that. If anybody wants to know more about it, feel free to reach out to me direct. But that's an incredible thing because what it shows in 60-second increments is the amount of threads in use and the state of the memory. This is in the JVM heap, and that can really help home in on problems, because if you see all of a sudden that the threads go to infinity at a particular time, it gives you a time to start digging in. It's like a bit like crime scene investigation. Anyway, that's taking us off the matter in hand here. These are the logs that I've set. When you go into this log settings area for API Manager, everything's blank. So these are the logs that I've set to to start with. Again, I'm learning, so I'll see how this goes as time goes by. One other thing that looks incredibly interesting, again within API Manager, is all these dashboards. Now they're all empty at the moment because I haven't set anything up yet in a test environment. I will, but if you can see, there's lots of dashboards here we can look at. We can configure things. Again, this is pretty. I haven't really done much with it yet, but as you can see, it says no results found. But this dashboard looks really interesting, so I'll be doing some more work on that and publishing items from the work in that. So yeah, so that's really as far as I'll go back to the administrator. That's really as far as I'm going to go in what I know to date. I do recommend looking at to look at the API manager. Another thing that I'm not certain of, and maybe Adobe can sort of follow up somehow or other in after the event sort of thing, is whether I know with ColdFusion 2016 API Manager was packaged with it. I'm not certain whether with Enterprise. Let me say that again. ColdFusion 2016 Enterprise. I'm not certain if it's packaged with ColdFusion, the latest version of ColdFusion. As far as being part of the Enterprise again, I'm talking. But anyway, that's something that maybe Adobe can follow up on. I think it should, if it isn't API Manager, that is, if it isn't available as a standalone product, I think it should be, because I think we can market it to people who aren't currently ColdFusion users. And like I say, that may give us a leg into ColdFusion overall, and the wonderful product that it still is. So I'm drawing to a close here. I'm going to try and go back to my slides if I can. Let me look here. Yeah, I think, okay, hopefully that worked. Let me just get up the last few slides here. And again, apologies that the slideshow didn't work. It's probably something I didn't do.
Yeah, we're still seeing your tabs and
all
your
right.
browser. Yeah, no problem.
Let's try again.
Yeah, this happens to me all the time, Mike. I get like monitor confusion in Connect for my stuff. So.
Yeah. I apologize. I haven't used Connect for a bit, but it used to be called Breeze, I think, if I remember that right.
I think it still runs on Breeze. There we go. ColdFusion constructs for blockchain Web3. Got it.
Yeah. So these are slides I'm not. Thank you, by the way. These are slides I'm not going to go into detail on, in the sense that there's loads of text again. But what I did here is I put together what I thought were great, ColdFusion script or tag constructs that can help us already if we come into situations where we're interfacing with blockchain technology, which, as I've said before, is probably going to happen more and more. There's a few slides here because there's a few, and then I'm back there. That's what. Okay, so I'm pretty much at the end of the presentation. I do apologize for the technical snafus that occurred with regard to screen sharing, but I did manage to, thanks to the help of Adobe here, I did manage to show everything I wanted to. I'll definitely be following up my own, as I mentioned several times, with API Manager, but I really do think it's a wonderful product whose time had come and has come. So thanks to everybody for listening today, and let's continue. And as the intro video said, ColdFusion is still is still there, and is still blazing trails. So thank you so much to everybody, and I shall now disappear off into the ether again if I can find out how to do it.
Well, Mike, so I think there's at least one question. If you stop your share, you should be able to see the UI, and you should be able to see the Q&A pod.
Okay, let me have a look.
And someone asked a question, which is a fun one, actually. Technically, what is a Bitcoin, and how can we interact with it as devs? AE wants to know.
Yeah, good question. I'm sorry I didn't see that. No, but well, I'll say this as quick as I can. Although I'm all right for time, but I don't want to take too much of your time. So if you here's my recommendation: read the Bitcoin white paper, number one. It's about 9 pages. It's nothing, terribly detailed. But the idea of Bitcoin came about or sort of materialize, because it had been talked about for years. Because of the 2008 and 2009, and I'll get to the nub of the question in a minute. Because of the 2008, 2009, financial crisis, and that's another story in itself, because it never really got resolved. But anyway, so the idea was to create an alternative value mechanism, value exchange mechanism to fiat currencies. That was its idea. But like all good things and human nature, people find a way to monetize it. So now you've got, as I probably touched on in my presentation, Bitcoin's worth $22,000, or it's one Bitcoin, that is, or so in terms of interacting with it technologically, there's a this is to everybody. I recommend looking at it. There's something called the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is, and just to explain that from a technology standpoint, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many other blockchains are what are called layer one blockchains, and they're not easy. They're not easy to interact with. They're either not easy to interact with, or they're bloody slow, or they're expensive, or any of those things. So Ethereum got around that originally by having this ability to create what are called dApps, or distributed applications. So it's fairly easy to interact with things on the Ethereum network. But it hasn't been like that with Bitcoin. But the Lightning Network, I'm looking at the chat here. The Lightning Network is a way to easily interact, or more easily interact with Bitcoin, and it's the Bitcoin layer one network. So Lightning is a layer two network. If any of you've been following Bitcoin's progress, El Salvador now has Bitcoin as legal tender, and they were able to do that purely because of the Lightning Network. So that I don't know whether that's adequately answering the question. I hope it is. Just have a look at the Lightning Network, like I say, as far as Bitcoin goes, and and there's a lot going on, and the irony. I'll just give you a personal opinion here. The irony of Bitcoin is if it hadn't have been adopted as a means of exchange or a stock market like construct, that's why it goes up and down in value. I don't think it would ever have grown and stayed around as long as it has. I believe there's somewhere around this is a known number. There's somewhere around 15,000 Bitcoin miners in the world, and I say known because there's probably at least a good number more that aren't known about. So I hope that adequately answered that question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think definitely blockchain can be kind of confusing for a lot of folks, but
absolutely,
myself included. I've been doing a lot of research into that area. All right, so we had someone that asked for a link to the planting stuff, but we got a link back from Walter. He had your permaculturenews.org link, I think, so that got answered.
Yeah, I see that there, permaculture news, and I can, I can. What would be good in that respect is if I could. I don't know if I can do it now. Let me just see. Am I still sharing my screen, by the way?
You are, yeah. I'm seeing ColdFusion Dev Week 2022 questions. Yeah, there you go.
Let's have a look. All right. Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll share. It'll take too long to do it at the moment, but I'll share a link to that. There's an application I created called PermaLedger, which is where I keep notes of everything that I do in terms of seed saving, distribution, planting, and so on. I think that would be a good introduction. And I apologize for sort of deviating a little bit there, but and talking about permaculture, but it was mainly in the in offering to help if anybody wants to know more about it, as a hopefully a community motivated thing.
It's fantastic. Marcy asks, what is the best evolution of CF over the years?
Oh, blimey. The best evolution. Well, no doubt, and to this day, I mean, the ability, just to go back to what I talked about at the beginning of this, the ability to query a database via a web interface is definitely the most, if I had to pick the single most revolutionary thing that ColdFusion enabled, that's it. You know, talking about some of the, bear in mind my work, I haven't been a developer since like 1997, I think. 8. Anyway, the point is, so a lot of the other stuff that in ColdFusion that I, you know, that I like and I use. I mean, another incredible tag used well is CF dump. You know, I hope that came all right because I've got this Northern English accent and you sound like they're somewhere under the floor. But anyway, CF dump I think was an amazing thing. You know, the move to Java. I mean, that was an amazing you know, achievement, and it was an important one because it brought us into what was a standard world, which is at that time the J2EE world, and you know, a wonderful subject for me, and it makes other people fall asleep. Is tuning the JVM. It's an amazing bloody thing to get into. You know, you know, it's and it's at the, you know, to this day, and then this goes for any Java application, not just ColdFusion. The JVM is the heart of everything, and if that isn't running right, then it's pretty much impossible to get things running right. I always use this as an analogy because I used to live in LA. It's like deciding to drive from LA to Las Vegas. If you don't tune the JVM right, that is. Let me restate that. It's like trying to drive from LA to Las Vegas in a V6 with only 3 cylinders firing. You'll get there, but you'd use a lot more. You know, you'll be tremendously inefficient. So tuning, and I would say this is a general rule, as an overall general rule to everybody. Whether it be ColdFusion or whatever it is, find ways. There's lots of information out there. There's not just me doing it. Find ways to tune the JVM because it's really important, because that is the heart of everything. You know.
And that's a really good point, Mike. I think a question I see a lot is, what's the thing that I need to do to make my ColdFusion JVM work well? And I don't think people quite get that there isn't a pill to take, right? There isn't one answer. It's, what does your application do? What's the load?
Yeah.
What's the, you know, it does take expertise like yours to begin to understand what those tuning things are, garbage collection. And there really isn't one way to set it up. Because if there was, we would do that from the start, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, just for an example of, or an extension of what you just said, AI is fairly prevalent now. You know, nobody's yet brought out an AI that can tune a JVM. You know, I mean,
exactly.
I did mention something that's really important, and I've got to find. I'll find a way to share information about it. So there's inside CF admin in the in debugging and logging. There's a setting that's metrics logging. It's not on by default, and and there's reasons for that because it's got to be set up. You couldn't sort of do it out of the box. But what that does, if you set that up, the default is to dump thread usage and memory every 60 seconds into. There's a dedicated metrics log, and there's also a ColdFusion out log, which gets that information dumped into too. And what that will show you is the state of the threads and the memory every 60 seconds. And that can be quite arresting, you know, because you can see things like free memory suddenly disappearing, or heat or threads hanging. And I'll give you a little insight into that. If threads hang, there will always be an item memory error. That's a given. But if there's an item memory problem, it doesn't always mean that threads will hang. You know, so that's an insight. But I'll repeat it again because it's really important. Metrics logging.
Now, are there downsides, in your opinion, to having metrics logging? I mean, it sounds like it's extremely log write heavy, which is not a free operation, and also you're using up some room on your server. Do you use any kind of clearing out mechanic to clear out those log files? Is there any like suggestions that you would make for people use that in an effective and efficient way?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like all the CF logs. I'm pretty sure I'll double check this too. I'm check myself. There is there is a level you can set where the log rolls over. So you'll get multiple metrics logs. To answer the question overall, it's a very low level logging. It's text, obviously text only. It's a single line every 60 seconds. And in my experience, have not found anybody having problems with that. The benefits from it are so important. And let me give you an exact example of that. So like I said, the metrics, there's a dedicated log, which is handy to look at because it's a log every 60 seconds isn't that bad to scroll through. It also goes into the out log, the ColdFusion out.log. And that's the important bit, because if you've got a problem, because that log also collects problems, explicit problems. As I said earlier, ColdFusion is great at logging. So by combining the metrics, so let's give you an example. So you look at the metrics log, everything looks nice, the threads are circulating okay, no problem. And all of a sudden threads start hanging. And you'll see at a particular time slice, on this date at that time, threads started hanging. What was going on? So if you then go from the metrics log at that date and time into the out log, you'll get a good idea of what's going on, what caused it.
That's very cool. Well, thank you so much for this information. I think you've blown a lot of minds today, and filled all our brains with stuff to think about, Mike. I'm going to move us over to the outro, and have some folks vote on Mike's presentation. Thank you so much to Mike for coming and finishing out Developer Week strongly. Thank you all for coming. Please stay online after this screen. We do have some feedback that we'd love to get from you all for Dev Week as a whole, and that will be coming up in just a couple of minutes. We want to thank all our speakers for coming out, sharing their knowledge, spending the time, and being amazing, and also all of the participants for also being amazing. My name is Mark Takata, and stick around for just a little bit, and then have a wonderful thing. Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Thank you to my good friend and partner, Alistair. Mike, could you pick a winner for the voucher program, someone that impressed you with questions during your talk, or maybe you had a question that you'd like to post to people? I can swing us back to the chat for that if you wanted to do that instead.
I think, can you still hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Good. So I think the person that asked a question about Bitcoin, because
I think that was AE. That was AE.
Okay.
All right, so AE is our winner. AE, if you could please send me an email. Stick around for a bit, AE. I will message you in lobby chat to get your information. But in the meantime, everyone, please vote. These polls are very important. I know you've done a lot of them over the week. Your clicking fingers are tired, but we love to get this data because it really helps our speakers hone their craft, get better, get feedback, and all of those good things. All right, Mike, I am going to close you out here for the day. Thank you so much again for coming out and speaking. We love to have you, and we look forward to the next speaking engagement that you will have with us.
No, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it, and thanks to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.